Okay, let me,
That's all right, go. It's okay, go.
tell me when y'all are ready, okay?
All right, so I'm going to run through the arachidonic acid pathway real quick, and this is kind of the core biochemistry and science behind why new ageLoc youth is going to revolutionize the way Americans behave as far as their health, and hopefully give them some knowledge to combat and change what they eat. So it's no secret, scientists have discovered that ancient diet, paleo diets, if you will, had a combination or a ratio of intake of two beneficial autocoids, which is our lipid mediators that exert paracrine effects on tissue function, which basically means that interleukins, cytokines kind of result from them. There were two kinds. There's omega-6s and omega-3s. And you can kind of see right here that the omega-6s is simply kind of going too far in detail with the science. It just means that the double bond in the fat molecule is just 6 carbons away from the end. Not much difference, but the difference lies in the ratio, and the significance lies in the ratio. In that in prehistoric times, the ratio used to be 1. The intake of omega-6s to omega-3s used to be 1. And the significance of that is that today, the modern American diet is so filled with modified fats, trans fats, saturated fats, what have you, that the amount of omega-6s that we're taking compared to omega-3s is anywhere from 10 to 24.
To 1.
Yeah, compared to it used to be 1. Why is that even important? Right? Well, so we have basically this arachidonic acid pathway, which is the main mediator for inflammation in our body. It is essential. That means that we cannot live without it. It does so many functions. But the problem is the body is a fine-tuned machine. We're just pressing the controls in the wrong way, right? So if you look at this, the omega-3s come, the pathway for this, or we call it N3 in this pathway, it starts with alpha-linoleic acid and it goes all the way down, and over time your body converts it to EPA and DHA, which are healthy autocoids. They're anti-inflammatory, right? If I look at the pathway for omega-6s, start off with the same linoleic acid, but you get down to arachidonic acid, right? And it feeds into this cycle. Let's kind of go over this cycle real quick. This is all happening on top of the red blood cells and the platelets in our body, which are in the millions, billions, right? So membrane lipid, phospholipase, converts these kind of phospholipids to arachidonic acid. That's continuing from this diagram right here. And it has two choices here, right? Arachidonic acid, depending on the needs of the body, can first go down this pathway. Let's hit this one first, via cyclooxygenase, which is an enzyme that is responsible for this, kind of shortened to COX-1 and COX-2. Now, these are the main players in converting inflammation in our body. When you take an aspirin, when you take a Tylenol, when you take an acetaminophen, it works. When you take an arnica, it works on these, right? The reason why you even get benefits is because the cyclooxygenase is inhibited by these over-the-counter medications, right? But what are these even doing? Well, COX-1 is the main mediator that comes out of COX-1. It's an enzyme that converts to thromboxane A2. And that's basically just a fancy word for saying a platelet aggregation molecule, right? So basically what I have written here, COX-1 is in platelets of endothelial cells, the kidneys and the lining of the stomach. It was responsible for platelet aggregation and gastric acid, and it's involved in GI protection from bleeding. So basically, a clotting mechanism, right? And it kind of holds the balance with COX-2. It's also responsible for vasoconstriction of the blood vessels. COX-2, it's the main player for inflammation. It causes fever, it causes pain, it causes headache, but it's also carcinogenic, right? And this is the main player as far as vasodilation of the blood vessels in our body. If you think about it, when we have something, inflammation equals swelling, right? This is COX-2. This is the reason that we even get swelling and inflammation, right? And a minor player is COX-3. It's simply just pain perception, right? There's no other function of that. And it's nice because aspirin is selectively inhibitive of COX-3, so it's the reason why it's the best pain relief without much COX-1 and COX-2 inhibition. But look where this goes, right? It goes to endoperoxides. goes to prostacyclins and these things that we've all heard of, prostaglandins, right? Major players of inflammation, right? And you can kind of see what happens. I have it all written here, kind of what each one of these does, right? And so you kind of understand that pathway. Let's go down the lipooxygenase pathway, right? Lipooxygenase is an enzyme that converts the arachidonic acid pathway to HPEATs, hydroperoxides. Now, HPEATs are good for our body, but they're bad. The thing is, the bad side, they promote atherosclerosis, which basically leads to heart disease. They promote tumor growth, and they promote also, again, platelet aggregation, right? The hydroperoxides, or HPs, go to leukotrienes, and these are the major players. This is the reason why asthmatics die, right, when they get an asthma attack, because they get an allergen that activates lipooxygenase, and HPs go crazy making leukotrienes, which increase that bronchial tone. LTC, LTD4, and LTE4 increase that bronchial tone and basically suffocating you because the inflammation is so strong, right? Once again, our body is a fine-tuned mechanism, but when we press the wrong controls, it can't really do anything. Now, here's the big thing: LTB4, right? What is the main player of acute inflammation? It's neutrophils, which come in and destroy tissue, which remodel it, which basically are the kind of construction workers of our body, right? LTB4 is a neutrophil chemotactic agent, which basically means LTB4 is a molecule that acts on the immune cells to secrete cytokines to attract neutrophil to that spot of the body and begin reconstructing and tearing down, right? And destroying if need be. These are the main players for fighting infection, for bacteria, for killing parasites, right? So it sounds like all this can be useful, but if it kind of goes crazy, it can be very harmful, no? Well, think about this. If we're consuming a ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s, that means that 10 to 24 times, rather than omega-3s making these DHA and EPA, which are beneficial anti-inflammatory autocoids, we're activating this pathway. Basically 10 to 24 times more than necessary, we are activating this arachidonic acid pathway, and we are in such a state of inflammation that it's no wonder that diabetes is just running out of control, that cerebrovascular accidents such as stroke, inappropriate clotting, inflammatory diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, Parkinson's, neurodegenerative, anything related to inflammation, right, is because this is just overactive like crazy. Now, there's one connection I'm not quite making here that perhaps you've caught on, is that these two cancel out each other. And I'm sorry, I don't know with my limited knowledge exactly the biochemistry how they cancel out, but I know that DHA and EPA are anti-inflammatory and work to counteract the effect of omega-6s in the arachidonic acid pathway, right? But if there's nothing to counteract that, this has just gone out of control, and you're going to lead to a state of chronic inflammation in the body. What ageLoc Youth does is give you the proper mechanics and the nutrients so your body can start regulating that balance and taking it closer to a 1-to-1 and drastically reduce the state of inflammation in your body that is unnecessary.